There's a popular misconception that UFO sightings tend to be restricted to small groups of witnesses in isolated areas, without corroboration from other sources. However, it takes only one case to smash this long-held myth. The Hudson Valley sightings, in which an estimated 7,000 witnesses saw gigantic formations of lights drift silently through the sky north of New York City, spanned more than 13 years through the 80s and early 90s. The sheer number of independent witnesses to unexplained lights and craft attest to the reality of their claims, and the consistency of their various reports compels us to take a more serious look at the UFO phenomenon, even in the face of official denial. The first anomalous sighting in the Hudson Valley area occurred just a few minutes before midnight on January 31, 1981. An anonymous police officer and his family saw a boomerang-shaped craft with roughly 15 red, green, and white lights anchored to its underside drift slowly over top of their home. At one point, the lights instantly went out, and in their place appeared 3 blinding white lights in the shape of a triangle. Roughly 5 seconds later, the colored lights returned, and the craft drifted over the horizon and out of sight. It moved at a walking pace and made no noise at all. 55-year-old Edwin Hansen saw what appeared to be the same object as he was driving down Interstate 84, just moments after the family's sighting. Hansen, among others, pulled his car over to the side of the road to watch a boomerang-shaped formation of lights drift over his car while firing bright beams of light down to the ground. The object was so large that it filled the sky in front of him. Just as Hansen thought he'd like to get a closer look, the object turned towards him. He panicked as the object approached, mashing the car horn in a vain attempt to scare it away. However, he calmed down when a voice in his head instructed him not to be afraid. Hansen took this to be a telepathic communication from the unknown craft, as did the many others who experienced similar unspoken communications when encountering the lights. Eventually, the craft turned away and retracted the beams, prompting Hansen to speed away back home. In the following months, many hundreds of witnesses saw the same boomerang-shaped object, exhibiting the same strange behaviors. A woman and her daughter chased the object down several miles of country road, catching up with it as it hovered over a frozen pond, turned in her direction, and then drifted off and vanished in place. She said that the object was 200 to 300 feet across and dead silent. There were several witnesses nearby who saw the same object at the exact same time, and soon after as it passed Interstate 84. Soon after the earliest sightings, amateur UFO investigator Philip J. Imbrogno began collecting witnesses' statements with assistance from J. Allen Hynek, former consultant to Air Force Project Blue Book, and investigators from Hynek's own Center for UFO Studies. Imbrogno's team pieced together the most exhaustive record of the Hudson Valley sightings ever collected and began probing for explanations. The anomalous sightings resumed the next spring. On the evening of March 17, 1983, a woman in Brewster, New York saw a V-shaped object with lights all the colors of the rainbow arranged along its wings, and one large light in the center. The object hovered over her neighbor's home and enveloped him in a blinding beam of light. Several other neighbors were watching, as were a number of motorists pulled over on a nearby interstate. Imbrogno's team later obtained a statement from the man, who turned out to be the deputy clerk for Putnam County. The following week, on March 24th, another wave of sightings occurred, and people began demanding an explanation for the strange lights. The Yorktown police eventually declared that the UFO was a group of planes flying in formation, although they were unable to identify the culprits. The Putnam police later stated that the lights belonged to ultralight aircraft flying in formation, which remained the dominant theory for many years. After advertising their services in local papers, Imbrogno's team set up 2 phone lines to collect witness depositions. Immediately, people from all over the Hudson Valley area began calling in. While most sightings went unreported, as UFO encounters often do, Imbrogno and his team estimated that there were several thousand witnesses to the lights that night. Analysis revealed that there were at least 2 different objects seen, one described as being as large as an aircraft carrier, and the other somewhat smaller. The reports described the by now familiar boomerang-shaped object, but every sighting contained a unique description of its behavior. Witnesses reported seeing it jump positions in the sky, disappear and reappear in place, fire down beams of light, and even release seemingly self-propelled lighted objects. The most commonly reported behaviors, however, involved focusing lights on witnesses and hovering over people in small bodies of water. The Federal Aviation Administration later conducted an investigation of the sightings, but could not identify the mysterious lights. They offered no official explanation, but members of the Public Relations Office stated on numerous occasions that they assumed the lights to be the work of skilled pilots flying ultralight aircraft in formation, just as the police had thought. The story died down in the following months. However, almost exactly a year later, on the night of March 25, 1984, another wave of sightings occurred, followed by several more that summer. On June 11, 1984, a giant V-shaped formation of lights buzzed the Newcastle Police Headquarters in the village of Chappaqua in the middle of a town board meeting. Several officers saw the object, and a neighboring county's airport tracked it on radar. Additional sightings occurred in the following nights, some of which in conditions too windy for ultralights. On July 12th, and then again on July 19th and 24th, another wave of sightings occurred across Connecticut and New York State, this time of a circular lighted craft the size of a football field. Imbrogno and Hynek estimated that there were 5,000 witnesses on the first night alone. At least 12 of these were police officers, and one was the Danbury County Police Chief himself. In several instances, the UFO interacted with the witnesses, flashing different lights in response to flashlight movements. A resident of Brewster, Bob Pozzuoli, captured the object on film. That fall, Hynek and Imbrogno decided to arrange a conference in Brewster in an effort to draw the public's attention to the anomalous events. News of the conference spread across the country, and in the end, over 1,500 people attended, including more than 75 news people. Here the investigators showed the Pozzuoli film, which was subsequently broadcast on news stations. The New York State Police and the FAA were also invited to present, but both declined. The conference caused a media splash, and the additional exposure brought new sightings to the team's attention. Most crucially, they learned that enormous boomerang and cone-shaped objects had drifted over Indian Point Nuclear Reactor Complex on 2 separate occasions in June. The event was witnessed by both plant workers and guards, and the facility's security system had mysteriously shut down when the object approached. Imbrogno's team also received several reports of so-called missing time, and what appeared to be abduction experiences, although the phenomenon was not well understood at the time. Although the sightings decreased in frequency, similar boomerang-shaped and circular objects continued to peer over the Hudson Valley until at least as late as 1995. And further research revealed that reports of similarly shaped and sized objects in the area date back at least as far as 1951. Even several decades later, the wave of sightings in the Hudson Valley remains the longest-running and most intensely studied in UFO history. It is also one of the most difficult to account for with mundane explanations. Still, the case's credibility in the public eye was greatly compromised when it was discovered that Imbrogno had fabricated many of his supposed scientific and military credentials. The case is also notable for being the last major investigation with which Hynek was involved before his death in April 1986. The work he co-authored with Imbrogno and journalist Bob Pratt, Night Siege, was the last to bear his name. Despite the overwhelming body of evidence that he helped to compile in his lifetime, and the incredible impact that the Hudson Valley sightings had on the public imagination, Hynek died without seeing any significant advances in the scientific conception of the UFO phenomenon. Nearly 30 years later, little has changed, and of course, the mystery ultralight pilots were never found.